Welcome to today's workshop, all about replacing a light fixture. My name is Robin Riebel, and I will be your host as we go through the step by step process of replacing a light fixture, as well as some of the other things you might want to think about when choosing a new fixture for your home. Now, there's a few things we should talk about before actually getting into the DIY. First and foremost, we're going to look at some planning. What size fixture? Where is it going to be hanging? What do you need to know before you even start? Then we're going to look at the tools needed. Real simple, nothing too complex. All right. But what do you need? Finally, we're going to walk through the steps of actually removing and replacing your light fixture. Our focus today is going to be mainly on ceiling fixtures, but the steps are similar for wall mounted fixtures as well. Now, before you go and start tearing down light fixtures, you may want to take a few things into consideration. Like I said, the first thing is, where is that fixture going to be hanging? Will it be in an entry or maybe over an island? Maybe you're looking for a fixture that'll hang over a dining table or in a game room over a pool table. The next thing you really want to think about is, what size light do you need? Will it be too big or not big enough? How about the style of it? Is it something that's going to match or complement your home? Or is it something that's going to compete with it? Maybe you're looking for a really great conversation piece that people are going to come in and talk about. So you really want to think about these things before you even go shopping. It's going to make it a lot easier to make that selection and ensure that you have everything you need in order to complete the replacement. We mentioned getting the right size light. How do you know how big your fixture should be? Well, a real easy way to do that is you want to measure both the length and the width of your room in feet. Now, you can round to the nearest foot, that's fine. And then you want to add these two numbers together. The ideal diameter of your fixture is going to be that same measurement converted to inches. For example, if I have a 10-foot by 12-foot room, I would have 22 feet when I add that together. So the ideal diameter for a fixture is going to be 22 inches in diameter. Now that we have the right size fixture, how high should we hang it? Light fixtures should be a minimum of about 84 inches off the floor to avoid anybody hitting their heads on it. Now, if the fixture is hanging over a table or a countertop, then the recommended height is about 30 inches above the table or counter, as measured by the lowest part of the fixture. So, if you're picking a light fixture that has anything hanging off of it, you want to make sure you take the absolute lowest part of the fixture, the lowest hanging part of the fixture, and that should be at least 30 inches above your table or countertop. Now, as far as the diameter of a fixture that's hanging over your table, when we originally talked diameter, we were talking about for the size of the room. But if you're looking for something to go directly over a table, then you want to choose a fixture that's half the diameter of the table. So if I have a 48-inch dining table, I want a 24-inch light fixture. Let's talk a little bit about different styles of lights. First of all, how about we talk about chandeliers? These have a tendency, when people hear chandeliers, can be very elegant or very large, sometimes over the top. And they can be, but they really don't have to be. The only thing that really defines a chandelier is the fact that it does hang down from the ceiling, and it often has multiple layers tiers of lighting. That's what makes it a chandelier. Now, they're great for all different types of rooms, right? Typically, they're used in foyers and dining rooms, sometimes in bedrooms or master baths, but they really can be put anywhere. So that's your first one, is your chandelier. Now, another great option, especially if you have lower ceilings in your home, are flush mount light fixtures. These, again, will throw off that ambient overall light. They're often installed everywhere: bedrooms, hallways, sometimes in closets. You can see them in dining rooms, kitchens, dens, playrooms, anywhere you can put a flush mount light. But the advantage to those, like I said, is if you have lower ceilings, because they usually only hang down a couple of inches. The base of them is mounted very close or tight to the ceiling, flush with the ceiling, and the only part that hangs down is whatever cover is over it. So that's considered a flush mount light fixture. Now, you can also get what's known as a semi flush mount, and they usually mount to a single point, right? So you'll have one small mounting area, and then you might have a short pole or a short drop, and then your light fixture. Now, these are not quite as low as your flush mounts, so you have a little more room, especially if you have a higher ceiling. Um, but they don't hang as low generally as chandeliers. Chandeliers will definitely usually be much longer or taller off of the ceiling. Now, those are probably your most common types of lighting fixtures, but there are a couple of other styles. We have things like pendant lights, which are great. Often you'll see your pendant lights hanging down over a countertop or island area in your kitchen. Those are great for directing light down or task lighting so that you can see what you're doing. There's also fluorescent lights, right? Your general fluorescent lights. You usually see these more in a commercial or a workspace type lighting, garages, basements, workshops, because they give off a lot of light. They're usually pretty durable, and they're kind of a little more commercial looking, not as decorative with your fluorescent lights. You can also find track lighting. Track lighting is a great option if you have a lot of area that you want to light, or if you have things that you want to highlight. So, with a track, all you do is you wire it in one small place, and then you position different lighting heads along that track, which allows you to turn and direct the light to either spread it out around the room or maybe highlight individual things. Like if you have artwork or things like that, you can use track lighting, and it can be very versatile around the room. We have a great guide which covers all of this in detail online, and that link is included in your resource guide. So make sure you go ahead and download that resource guide. We got a lot of great information on selecting the right type of light. Next thing we really want to go into are tools. Okay. Now, you don't need anything fancy in order to replace a ceiling light or a light fixture. But knowing what those tools are and how to use them is going to make that job a lot easier for you. Like I said, it takes relatively few tools. Most of the tools are hand tools. You really don't need much in the way of power tools. Some of the things you definitely want to have on hand. You're going to want to have a screwdriver, usually a Phillips head. I like to have a variety, maybe one or two Phillips heads, maybe a flat head, just in case, because you never know exactly what you're going to need when you get in there. So, just hand screwdrivers. You can use your drill driver or your power drill with a screwdriver bit on it. These sometimes have a tendency to get a little bit heavy when you're working over your head. And sometimes when you're working on a light fixture, hanging a light fixture, you need to get into a tight space. So a lot of times those power drills are a little bit too much. So I like to use hand screwdrivers. There's nothing really you can't do without that hand screwdriver. The next thing you're really going to want to have is a good pair of wire strippers. And these are just to remove that extra sheathing off the wires to give you that nice bare wire underneath for your nice tight connections. You definitely are going to want to have a selection of wire nuts or wire caps. Now, quite often, the wire nuts that you need will be included when you purchase your new fixture, but just in case, it's not a bad idea to have a couple on hand. Now, another thing that I feel is really important is a voltage tester. Relatively inexpensive, but this is just peace of mind to make sure that that circuit is turned off. We are always talking about safety first. Whenever you're working with electrical, you want to make sure you're turning off the power at the breaker. But having that voltage tester when you open up the light fixture, you can test those wires just to make sure that there is no power going to the area that you're working in. Now, another great extra to have is some electrical tape. And this is just for some added security or for joining your wires if you don't have wire nuts. I don't recommend that. I always recommend wire nuts. But a lot of times people like to, in addition to wire nuts, tape it. This kind of makes sure that the wire nut doesn't go anywhere, make sure nothing else can get in there. That is an extra step. It is just for extra peace of mind. It is not required. But do remember, if you are going to use tape, it must be electrical tape. You can't use painter's tape or duct tape or masking tape. Electrical tape is the only tape that is acceptable to use when dealing with wiring. Otherwise, anything else may become a fire hazard within your home. So, I personally wouldn't want to risk my single largest investment to save $3 or $4 on a roll of tape. If you're going to replace a light fixture that's on your ceiling, chances are you're going to need a ladder, okay, to safely reach that height of the fixture. Remember, basic ladder safety. You never want to stand on the top step of a ladder. So, the ladder that you choose should be no more than 2 feet shorter than your ceiling. So, for example, if you have a 10-foot ceiling in your home, you should have at least an 8-foot ladder before doing anything. Now, if you're going ahead to purchase a ladder for this project, you may want to look at fiberglass as it doesn't conduct electricity. But since you've turned off the breaker, it's not a major concern what your ladder is made out of, but it's just something good to know and keep in mind. And that's pretty much it. Those are all the tools that you're going to need to complete this project. Like I said, nothing really complex. Even that voltage tester, you can find a version of it for anywhere from $10 to $15 at your local Home Depot. So they're not real expensive, not real complicated tools, and real easy project. The first thing you're always going to want to do is read the instructions that were included with your light in order to familiarize yourself with the basic parts and features of your specific fixture. Some of the most common parts you're going to find in a light are going to be things like the mounting bracket, and that's usually just a bracket that goes on the existing box in your ceiling, and that's what the actual fixture mounts to. You're also going to have something like a canopy or a canopy ring. Quite often, unless you're talking about a chandelier, you may have some type of light shade. You are gonna probably have light sockets in there as well. Okay, so these are the ones that are kind of common in all light fixtures, right? That light socket, the canopy, a canopy ring, a mounting bracket, some sort of shade. Now, it's gonna vary depending on the fixture that you get. So that's why it's so important to read those installation instructions before you start your project. So now it is time to actually get to the step by step process of installing your new light fixture. Now, before you begin that installation, and I know we've said it a number of times, you want to make sure that you are turning off that power at the circuit breaker. Okay, that's the most important thing. Whenever we're working with electricity, safety first. Turn off the power at the breaker, not just the switch into the room. Now, you could also use that voltage tester to make sure that there's no power running through the circuit before you even begin work. Right. And that non contact voltage tester is real easy to use. As you see the wires, you just touch the wires with the voltage tester. And if the light turns red, the wire is live. You shouldn't go any further. If it's green, it means there's no power in the circuit and you're safe to proceed. The first step is, of course, removing the existing fixture. Now, you're going to want to consider the weight of the existing fixture before you begin removal. You may need another person to help support the weight of it while you unbolt any screws or lock nuts that attach that fixture to the ceiling. So, if you need to get a second pair of hands, make sure that you do. You're going to want to disconnect the light fixture's wires from the house wires by twisting off the wire connectors and untwisting the connections. Make a note of how these wires are connected because you're going to want to reconnect them in the same way on the new light fixture. Now, when you fully disconnected those wires from the light fixture, you're going to remove that fixture from your work area and leave the house wires hanging so that it'll be easy for you to connect the wires to the new fixture. Now, this is a great time to take a minute and make sure the box itself is secured tightly in the ceiling. After all, that's what's really holding the weight of your light. In the case of an extremely heavy fixture or chandelier, you may need additional support for your light. So, usually anything up to about 50 pounds can be supported by a standard box. Anything over that 50-pound mark or a ceiling fan needs to have additional support. Ceiling fans, although they might not be as heavy, because of the movement, they need additional support as well. The next thing that you're gonna wanna do after you take off that old light fixture is, again, look through your instructions and pre-assemble any of the parts that need it. So if there's a mounting rod, you're gonna wanna attach it to the mounting hardware first. This is the time you're gonna wanna adjust that chain to your desired length. Make sure you leave a little bit of slack for adjustments. You may need to thread the fixture's wires through the links of the chain. You're gonna then go ahead and strip the ends of the wire to ensure that there's about a half to 3/4 of an inch of bare wire showing for your connections. Now, a lot of times that chain may need to be threaded through the canopy before mounting. Like I said, you wanna make sure that that canopy is on there before you wire everything up. Once you have everything pre-assembled, now you're going to want to affix that mounting strap or plate that came with your new fixture to the outlet box. You got to make sure that either the heads or the mounting rod are facing to the outside when you put that mounting bracket on the box, right? A lot of times they accidentally get put on backwards, and your mounting screws are now facing the inside of the box instead of the outside where you need to attach them to. At this point, you can go ahead and rewire the fixture. And it's usually just as simple as matching up the colors of the wire, meaning black to black, white to white, and so on. Now, as a general rule in the United States, either black or red usually denotes a hot wire. Okay. White are usually your neutral wires, and those green or bare wires are your ground wires. Now, once these wires are securely connected, you want to go ahead and push them back up into the junction box. Get them up there nice and tight. At this point, you're going to mount the base of your light fixture. And there's a number of ways that these fixtures can attach. So if you have a fixture with a chain, then you're going to put in the mounting bracket and then just replace that canopy and tighten the little nut that'll hold it into place. But if you have something like a flush or a semi flush mount, you may have screws that need to be lined up with keyholes in order to fit on the outlet box. Make sure those are all lined up. And then usually that base needs to be twisted. And then you're going to want to go back and after they're twisted and tighten them down to make sure that they're secure. Remember, this is what's holding that fixture up to the ceiling. So you want to make sure that everything is snug, right? You don't have to tighten it so hard that it's going to bend anything, but you do want to make sure that it is nice and snug. Now, usually at this point, that's where you're going to go ahead and install things like your light bulbs, put the light bulbs into the sockets, and then add usually the shade or any other type of covering that comes with your light fixture. Once you have everything assembled, now it's time to go ahead and restore power to the fixture. So you're going to want to go back and turn on that breaker and then flip that light switch and make sure that all your connections are working. And that's pretty much it. That's all you need to know about replacing a light fixtures. So, how many of you have those old, what they call can lights or pot lights? Those recessed lights, maybe over a island area in your kitchen, and you really want to go ahead and update them, but you're not quite sure how. Now, those are a little bit different than the light fixtures we've been talking about insofar as that can or that recessed fixture is not the same as an electrical box. So you can't always just attach a new light fixture to it. But sometimes they seem a little bit out of date or they're not as attractive as you'd like them to be. And you'd love to get some new pendants. But you really don't want to go through ripping out all those cans and installing new boxes. We've got a great solution for you. There are lights now that are designed to retrofit those can lights, and they are just as simple as screwing in a light bulb. So you can see here, this is your standard light bulb fitting. All you need to do is screw this into the outlet. They are adjustable. You can see I have all this additional wire here. I can make it longer or I can make it shorter just by winding up the excess wire. Screw this into that recessed light fixture. Slide up the canopy piece to cover everything. And then it just gets tightened off with a single hand screw right there that holds everything in place, holds the canopy tight to the ceiling, and you have a beautiful new pendant fixture without having to change out those old and dated can lights or recessed lights. This is a great feature to update your home. It's also great, let's say you have a full kitchen remodel but not right now. It's gonna be a couple years down the road, but you wanna lighten up, brighten up things, kind of update things a little bit. This is a great way to go ahead and do that. Super easy, minutes to install, and doesn't require any tools or any additional handiwork. So this pretty much brings us to the end of today's workshop. Now, we have covered a lot of material today from planning out your project to the tools that you're going to need in order to complete it. We went through the step by steps on how to take down and rewire a brand new light fixture. And I also gave you an option that's really just as easy as screwing in a light bulb. Now, hopefully, this has given you some really great information that will assist you in your next remodeling effort. Now, don't forget to go ahead and download those resources. We've got some great information in there for you. And if you do have any additional questions, feel free to email us at workshopslive@homedepot.com. And we'll make sure that we get back to you. Last thing there is on behalf of myself and the entire Home Depot team here, I just want to say thank you. You could have been doing anything with your time today, but you chose to spend it with us, and we appreciate that. So thank you, and thank you for shopping at the Home Depot.